This episode is brought to you by the Cornell Executive MBA MS in Healthcare Leadership, in partnership with the Weill Cornell Graduate School of Medical Sciences. The future of healthcare needs motivated and business-minded leaders who are equipped to facilitate change from within their organization and throughout the industry at large. Offered on the weekend in New York City, the Cornell Executive MBA MS in Healthcare Leadership is the only dual degree of its kind, combining business breadth and healthcare depth with world-class faculty instruction and an unmatched alumni network. Take the next step towards driving innovation in the healthcare industry by connecting with their admissions team. Search Cornell EMBA-MS to start your journey. Maricella, you and I have had the great honor of hosting some Ellevate roundtables lately. Can you tell me more about your roundtable?
Sure. I've been hosting the Managers Roundtable, which we get together every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern to talk for an hour. It's about 15 minutes of a guest expert talking about a certain topic. So everything about how to address performance issues with your team, or how to talk compensation with your team as a manager, or even how to build more authentic workplace within your team structure. And then we go into breakout rooms where people can ask questions and have conversations. So it's a really great place for all of us who we want to be managers that are building inclusive places. We want to be good at being there for our teams. And sometimes you can't really just Google you can Google how to be a good manager, but there are questions you might have that you can't really just find online. The best way to really get answers is to talk it through with others who might be in similar situations. So that's what we do at the Managers Roundtable. They're a lot of fun.
Maricella, that sounds amazing. And for any of our listeners who are managers of teams or want to become a manager and start having these important conversations, we invite you to check it out. Go to ellevatenetwork.com, where you'll find a list of all of our roundtables, including managers, those in career transition, executives, and rising leaders. And if you use the code ELLEVATEPOD, you'll get 50% off the cost of attending. So check it out now, and we'd love to hear your thoughts.
Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella Herrera. Maricella, you enjoying your time in London?
Yes, I am. It's exciting to be here. To be honest, I hadn't traveled in so long, and I hadn't seen my brother in so long. So it's nice to come see family and look at his new place and the new place where he lives. And I hadn't been to London since I was in college. So it's like a whole new world.
It's exciting. And, as we're thinking about our topic today, my guest, Tanya Dalton, wrote a book on purpose, The Busy Woman's Guide to an Extraordinary Life of Meaning and Success. I thought a lot about you and kind of how you're approaching life and going after not just meaning. I mean, you do that. You do a great job of finding the meaning and purpose in what you do every day and having that really inspire you. But also tapping into some of those moments like your current travels where, exploring cultures, family help to sustain you and help to, validate some of that purpose and give you that energy you need to keep fighting the fight that you do every day. And so I think you're going to love this episode, Maricella, because Tanya's got just a treasure trove of ideas, resources, tips, and tricks to really, find that purpose and to build that extraordinary life of meaning and success.
I love that. And you said that about me, but you're very into finding your meaning and purpose and aligning everything you do towards it.
Yeah, and so many of our listeners do as well. I mean, we've heard from many of you. Thanks for being such supporters of our podcast, always, but particularly these past couple of months. And we know we've been hearing that you're looking for that purpose. It's a time where we really want to better understand our role in this world and the impact we're having, that legacy we're building. So I would love to hear from all of you, your thoughts on this podcast episode. You can always reach us at podcast@ellevatenetwork.com, or feel free to reach out on social media, #ElevatePod, and tell us what you think about building a purpose and what your purpose is.
I can't wait to see what people say. To be honest, it's, again, purpose is the foundation of so many things, even of your personal brand. So we could sit here and talk about it all night long, but let's see what our guest has to say.
All right, let's get to that conversation.
Tanya, thank you so much for joining us here on the Ellevate podcast.
Absolutely. I'm so thrilled to be here.
I'm excited to get caught up on what you've been up to, and little teaser for our audience. It's some exciting things since we last met, I think, on your podcast. But I wanted to just start off the conversation learning a little bit more about you and hoping you could share with our audience a bit about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Absolutely. Well, we did have a lot of fun on my podcast, so I think we'll have a great time today. I think, too, my story is similar to a lot of people's stories where, where I am now isn't where I really ever anticipated I would be. I like to say I started off life as a teacher, thinking I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. And really, my whole world changed on a hot summer's day in Dallas, Texas, when I had started a little business. I started with $50. That was my seed money to get it started, and it was a side business. It was just one of those things that I wanted to do to keep myself active and busy while my husband was traveling the world for his job. He would be gone for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. He would leave our home in Dallas, Texas, and he would buy a ticket called the Around the World ticket. So literally flying all the way around the globe. And I had a call with him one evening where I was asking him how he was doing and all these other things. And I was telling him what the kids had been doing that day. And he got really quiet. And he said, "I'm missing everything. I'm missing all the moments. I'm missing all the milestones. I'm missing all of it." And I was like, "Oh, no, you're not. No, you're not." But I knew in that moment that he really wasn't fulfilled by what he was doing. So I hung up my phone and I stood in my bright yellow kitchen and I made a big decision, an audacious choice that day. I made the decision that I was going to grow my little side business that I'd started with $50, and I was going to grow it to the point where I could absorb his MBA income, where he could come and work alongside of me. We could have a lot more freedom, lifestyle freedom, and we'd be able to really live our life on our own terms. So I sat down. I have 0 business experience at that point, never had a company, hadn't even taken a business course in college. And so I sat down that evening and I mapped out, how am I going to make this work? I created systems for myself. I thought about where I wanted to go. I created a North Star for myself. And within about a year, I was able to make that goal happen. He came and started working alongside of me, which was amazing and it was fabulous. So we had a great trajectory of growth. Ended up deciding to move to Asheville, North Carolina, because we decided if we can have that freedom, let's live where we want to live. And in about 2013, I looked at my husband and I said, "I love you. I love working with you, but I don't love what we're doing. I'm not really passionate about this company that I've started. I just started it as a side hobby, remember?" And so he said, "Okay, what do you want to do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I have no idea." So I had to take some time and really sit back and figure out what is it I wanted to do. And there were really 3 things that I honed in on that I'm truly passionate about. I love working with women. Like, that just gets me so excited. And I love education. I love teaching people things. I used to be a teacher. And then I love productivity, because that's what allowed me to scale and grow my business the way that I had, so that he could come and work alongside of me. So I took these 3 very unrelated things and I linked them together to create Inkwell Press Productivity Co. So that's my company where we create productivity tools for women to help empower them to live their best lives. So started off with having products, physical products. So we had weekly planners, daily planners, all kinds of planners, calendars, journals, things like that. And then that ended up growing, and I grew to 7 figures in less than 18 months. And so then I was like, okay, now I can really bring on the service side of what I want to do. Started my podcast, started offering programs and courses, and then the publishers started knocking on my door, asking me to write a book. And that's where I am now. I had my first book come out in 2019. The Joy of Missing Out, which was named one of the top 10 business books of the year for 2019 by Fortune magazine. And now my newest book, On Purpose, which is a great follow-up to The Joy of Missing Out. So that is a quick version of how I got to where I am today.
It's so inspiring and to be honest, I mean, just incredibly relevant to the world in which we're living right now, right? And you talk about productivity, I think, well, I'll speak for myself, but I'm guessing many of our listeners feel the same, as just languishing is the word for 2021 and maybe 2020 and maybe 2022, and it's hard to be productive in this world that we're in. And then you get in that cycle of feeling guilty and feeling overwhelmed. And it's like on and on and on. And your new book, On Purpose, The Busy Woman's Guide to an Extraordinary Life of Meaning and Success, is, I mean, it's like the shining light of, okay, I'm maybe struggling, balancing, or not even, I don't even know why I said balance, because I don't believe in that, sort of integrating work and life and in the world we're in, and growing my business or growing my team or hitting my goals, or maybe just getting by every day. But this concept of purpose, which for so many of us is like, yes, I want to feel purpose. And I'm, navigating so many things in this world, and I want to be a success in what I define as my purpose and my life and my goals, and like I want to own it. So tell me more about this book and kind of what was the driving force behind it. Just love to hear a little bit more about the premise as we start this conversation to dig a little bit deeper into On Purpose.
Yes, absolutely. Because, I feel like purpose is one of those big things that people feel is really heavy. Like it defines you now and forever. And so it carries a lot of weight to it. So I like to say living on purpose isn't about changing who you are. It's rising up to becoming the best version of you. It's looking past today and looking out at the horizon to see what you want for tomorrow and making sure that you're working each day towards that, because that's how we feel satisfied. That's how we feel successful. There is so much going on in our world today with, businesses shifting and careers shifting and hybrid models of working at home, but also working in an office and Zoom calls. And there's a lot to navigate. It's a whole different world, which is amazing because it means there's a lot of opportunities. But as long as we're really doing the work that matters to us, that fills our soul and feels nourishing to us, I think that's what's really important. And what's funny is when HarperCollins asked me to write a second book, they said, we'd love for you to write a book on goal setting. And I thought, oh, sure, I could do that all day long. I've taught thousands of women how to set and achieve their goals. I can totally do that. So I wrote down a whole outline. I had it all mapped out, February of 2020. And then March happened, right? March of 2020 happened. And I didn't start writing. I'd fully already had created this schedule for myself. I'm going to do this chapter this month. And then I had a whole routine that I had done for myself. Well, I had to throw all of that out the window because all of a sudden I find myself homeschooling my kids, filing paperwork for PPP, trying to navigate my team and everything else with growing my business. And I wasn't able to write for a while. And to be honest with you, that was a beautiful gift, that procrastination. I think so often we think of procrastination as being this terrible thing or this awful thing that we do, when sometimes it's really in that space that we discover what it is we're really meant to do. And that's what happened for me with this book, is this book began to unfold in a way I never imagined. The world was changing outside of my windows, but I was changing. I was questioning the same thing that I was seeing a lot of other women questioning. What am I doing? Am I happy with what I've been doing? What is it I'm here for? What have I been put on this planet to do? And am I doing it? And so as I started to really allow the book some breathing room to become this organic thing, it began to unfold in a very different way. It was no longer about goal setting. Goal setting is in the book, and that's part of it. But goals are not the goal. I think so often we think that it's like when I hit this goal, when X happens, when I achieve, this revenue level, or I nail I get this client in the door, or whatever happens, then I'll be happy. But really, it's about living bigger than that. The goals are the vehicle to get us to the life we want. And that's what began to emerge as I let this book breathe itself into life. And so I started to notice it's really about the choices that we're making, the daily choices that we make. That's what living on purpose is really about. So that's how the book really began to take on a very different persona than what I had anticipated. And it began being more about purpose and how goals can help us get to that purpose rather than just goal setting itself.
All right. So I have so much to learn, and I want to go deeper on this. Can we start by just talking about our current patterns and our current way of thinking? And to get to this new way of thinking, which everything you say, I'm nodding my head and I'm like, yes. How do we disrupt those patterns that we're holding on to that aren't working for us to move into this mindset of purpose?
Yes. Well, I think that's the thing is our brain loves patterns. In fact, the first chapter of the book is called Choose to Disrupt Your Patterns because our brain, it loves those patterns. And so it's real easy to just rinse and repeat and do those same things over and over again because it's easy for our brain. It also, our brain is about survival. So our brain knows whatever we've done in the past, we've survived it, so we can keep on doing it. And that's when we get into that kind of routine of just punching the clock, doing the same thing over and over again. So it's important from time to time to step back and recognize, what are my patterns? What are the things that I'm believing? What are the things that I'm thinking? And so one of the things that we dive into in the book is that a lot of our patterns tie into these limiting beliefs that we have. We have these beliefs about this is the way the world works. Well, I'll be happy someday when this happens. Or this is just the way life runs, that we're not supposed to be happy right now. We're in the trenches with motherhood and the career ladder and all the other things. When if we take a step back, we can recognize, what's my thinking here? Why is it that I'm buying into this mindset that I have to struggle to be a success, or I have to work really, really hard to be successful? And so one of the things that we walk through is this strategy called the fifth why, where when we notice a pattern emerging in our lives, or we notice a thought pattern, we ask that question, why? We don't stop to ask why very often. But if we stop and ask that question, why am I feeling this way? We get to a surface level answer. But if we ask why 4 more times, which is why it's called the fifth why, we really get to the heart of why we are feeling the way we do. So I can walk you through this just really quickly if you'd like. Let's say that you're feeling like a failure. You're having a lot of negative self-talk. You feel like a failure. You ask yourself, why? Why do I feel like a failure? Well, I feel like a failure because I didn't get the promotion at work last month. All right, that's our first why. Let's ask why again. Why didn't you get the promotion? I didn't get the promotion at work because my boss didn't think I was ready. There's your second why. So we ask it again. Why didn't your boss think you were ready? My boss didn't think I was ready because I haven't gotten my advanced certification. Okay, I haven't gotten my advanced certification. Why? I don't have time to work on it after hours. So there we are at our fourth why. And then the fifth and final why would say, well, why don't you have time to work after hours? Because I'm not really planning my time and the evening just seems to get away from me. So there you see how we get to the heart of what's really happening. It's not about you feeling like a failure. It's that, okay, my planning is not working out for me. My evening seems to just slip away. So now I can change that. Now that I've gotten to the root cause, I can shift that and I can change the way I feel by making a few different adjustments to the actions I'm taking. So it's really powerful to step back and ask that question, why? Kind of channeling your inner 3-year-old. For those of you who have toddlers, you know what I'm talking about.
I love that, the fifth why. But and so that is this moment of, okay, in the moment you're asking why and you're getting to the root of the why. And let's look to the future. So that is, I'm reacting and I'm trying to understand and get to that point. But what about, when we talk about purpose and future looking, and you in the book talk a lot about wayfinding, how do we leverage that? What is that? And how do we leverage that to also be more in control of where we're going and what the path we're on?
Yeah, I love that. So really the wayfinding is really looking at where it is you want to go. Like, let's look far off into the future of what you think your potential could be. What could you potentially do in, let's say, 10 years or even 20 years? So looking really far off into the future, that is your potential. So now if we back up and we say, okay, that's what my potential is in like 10 to 20 years. What's possible in the next 3 to 5 years? What's possible for me to do to get me closer to that potential? So All right, that's what's possible in 3 to 5 years. Let me back that up again to what's practical. What could I do practically in the next 12 to 18 months? So you see how we're taking something from far away, 10 years, 20 years down the road. We back up that potential into what's possible, then what's practical, and then we say, okay, if this is what's practical, what are my priorities? What are the things I really need to prioritize? And we could just, instead of calling these our priorities, we could say, what are my goals? What goals do I need to set for the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? And that's when we start moving towards that big potential down the road. And in the book, you'll see it's written out like a little roadmap, right? With the potential far off into the future. This is how we back up and figure out these are the goals I want to set to get to that future I'm really looking for.
Well, and what happens if we have that vision and we've mapped out that plan, but we get stuck or we go off track? What are ways to navigate that?
Yeah, well, here's the truth. You're going to get off track. You know why? Life is messy. And it's going to happen from time to time. And I think what happens is, when that happens, we feel like we're stuck. And I say in the book, this is one of the things we talk about, is we think the opposite of stuck is unstuck. Like there's this magical moment where the clouds part and unicorns fly across the sky, and all of a sudden we're unstuck. The opposite of stuck is action. Taking action, small, itty bitty, tiny action to get us moving back where we want to go. And the truth is when we get off track, it doesn't necessarily mean we failed. Oftentimes it's the detours. It's when we get off of that path that we think we're supposed to be on. That's when we actually figure out what it is we really want to do. We're on that highway moving forward in our life, zooming through, and we get off track and all of a sudden we're on the scenic route. And sometimes we think to ourselves, oh, this is really what I like. This is really what I want. So that's the first thing I would say is we don't have to necessarily look at getting off track with our goals as a failure. But there's a process we can go through that I call the 3 A's, that when you find yourself off track, that you can do. The first A is to acknowledge. Oh, look at me, I got off track. Now, acknowledging isn't beating yourself up. Acknowledging is just saying, oh, I'm off track from where I thought I would be. So just acknowledging and accepting that you're not quite where you thought you would be. And then we get to our second A, which is assess. And this is a really big one because what happens is when we get off track, we just think, well, forget it. Or we think I'm the worst, or I never follow through on my goals, right? Well, if we do that second A, assess, it's like, okay, well, what happened that got me off track? Do I need to backtrack? What happened? I can look at the breadcrumbs of how I got here. But it's also an excellent time to stop and ask yourself, is this goal still for me? Sometimes we get off track because we've set a goal for ourselves and we have a fire in our belly in January. And then we get to February, March, and no fire in that belly anymore. Maybe it's that goal really wasn't for you, or you have shifted, or you've evolved, or you've changed a little bit, and you want to change what your goals are, which gets us to our third A, which is adjust. So we had acknowledge, assess, and then we have adjust. So we have a choice now. We can adjust, and we can shift that goal altogether. We can cross it out and write a brand new goal if we want to, or we can say, nope, this is still the goal for me. I just got a little off track. Let's adjust what we're doing. Let's take some action to get us back on path. And again, that action doesn't have to be a giant thing. It can just be taking one small step forward. Do I need to add in better habits into my day? Do I need to shift the way I'm looking at this goal? Do I need to create more time for me to work towards this goal? So when we do that, we're putting ourselves back in the driver's seat. We're putting ourselves back in charge. Instead of feeling like the universe is against us, or I'm the worst, nothing ever goes right for me, or I never am able to follow through on my goals, that puts us back in control when we acknowledge, assess, and then adjust. Because ultimately, those choices are yours.
I really love the framework of asking yourself questions. At least for myself personally, I tend to go into things with absolutes or assumptions. Like, I need this. I need to, I have to keep going on this path instead of, well, why do I? And is this what I need? And have things changed? And it's a way to really, I think, reset and hold yourself accountable. But the why, and the questions I think make us more deeply rooted and connected in that purpose, because we've gone through the work of exploration ourselves. And you talk in the book as well about, why words matter. And I agree. I think words really do matter, and the words we tell ourselves. And I was wondering if you could share a bit more about that, and especially as we go along this journey, why do these words really matter?
Oh, words matter so much. And I think we lose sight of that sometimes. And we don't think twice about the words we use, especially when it comes to describing ourselves. And I talk a lot about the words we're using in the chapter where we talk about choosing your identity. We oftentimes, especially as women, and this is well documented, women really struggle a lot of times with looking at ourselves as experts. In fact, there's a story that I tell in the book where there's a giant, conference room filled with hundreds of people. And the speaker on stage asks the question, are there any breastfeeding experts in the audience? And only one person raised their hand. And it was a man, a man who had watched his wife breastfeed for 3 months. Now, there were women in that audience, clearly, who had breastfed their own children, who had best friends who had breastfed, who had read books on breastfeeding. But we struggle to identify ourselves as experts. Women tend to struggle unless we meet 100% of the requirements. Men only require about 60%. So we as women tend to hold ourselves back. We want to make sure that we're playing by the rules, that if somebody else hasn't identified me as an expert, I cannot identify myself as an expert. I actually even did an article on this for Entrepreneur, and I did an all call on Herrera, Help a Reporter Out, where I asked women how they felt about being called an expert. Do they need to call themselves an expert or wait for someone to say it for them? And I received thousands of replies. And the vast majority was, I can't say that about myself. I need to wait for somebody else to call me that. And here's the thing, this is all about you, again, getting back in that driver's seat, that you get to choose how you are identified, because how you choose to identify yourself, the words you use to describe yourself, that's what other people take and run with. That's what they take at face value. So if you're calling yourself a small business owner, or, oh, I just have this little business, it's no surprise people look at you and think that you're a hobbyist, because they're not taking you seriously because you're not describing yourself seriously. Or if you want to be a writer or an author, start describing yourself as an author or a writer. You don't have to have a published book to be a writer. A writer is someone who writes. Choose how you are perceived. Choose who you want to present to the world. Those words matter so much, not just to you, but to how other people perceive you and how they receive you. And so really, I would say every woman listening to this podcast is an expert in some right. In some field, in some area of your life, you are an expert. Maybe it's in motherhood, maybe it's in finance, maybe it's in, HR, but you're an expert in some area. I would challenge you to uncover, what am I an expert in, and start calling yourself that.
Well, and I love that. I certainly, am always kind of blown away when someone's like, oh, you're an expert in XYZ. And I have to stop and be like, am I? What are you talking about? No, not me. But, sometimes the way other people see us too can be eye-opening, and we need to kind of own that more. But one thing that, my guess is holds us back is that fear, that fear of saying, well, I'm an expert, but then what if you fail? Or this is my path, and what if you, go off course? And we talked about that a little bit already, but, fear can be, I think, a big deterrent to progress. And what should we do to, do we overcome it? Do we embrace it? I mean, what do we do about that?
Well, I think right there, that's yet another choice. I talk in the book about how I made fear my ally. When it was time for me to step into growing my business from $50 to basically what it is now, I had a lot of fear around me, and I allowed that fear to circle me like a shark, because it was really pushing against the fear. I had fear of, what would this mean for our family? So having that feeling of, what if I fail, was enough to push me and promote me to the point where I could say, you know what, I need to do this. I'm going to step out of fear so that I can make this happen. But the thing is with fear is that fear and excitement manifest exactly the same in our body. Sweaty arms, sweaty armpits, stomach ache, all that, sweating and nervousness. What if we chose to reframe fear as excitement? Kind of like being at the top of a roller coaster, that same feeling that we get. What if we chose to look at the things that scare us with that mindset? It's not that something is scary and that's a sign that from the universe or from God that you're not supposed to do it. Maybe it's a sign that something exciting is about to happen, that it's a new opportunity. It really is about shifting how we look at things. And in the book, I go through a blueprint to really take those big fears that we have and break them down to get to the heart of them. And the honest truth is most of our fears are rooted in this idea that, what if everybody sees me fail? What if I am one of the 3 seeds of self-doubt? What if I'm unlovable? What if I'm helpless? What if I'm unworthy? And when we start to untangle those, that's when we can step into fear fully, and we can look fear in the face and say, this is not what's going to hold me back. We can choose to be brave. It's not about being fearless. There's no absence of fear that'll ever happen. We need fear in our bodies. That's what helps us stay alive. It's choosing to look past the fear and stepping forward anyway.
Oh, Tanya, such great stuff here, and resources and tools I think we all can use and need and help us as we navigate these times and into the future. Could you share with our listeners today how they might find your book?
Yes, so the book is available anywhere books are sold. You can also find information about it at TanyaDalton.com. You can find links to my podcast, The Intentional Advantage, links to my first book, The Joy of Missing Out, and this newest book, On Purpose, The Busy Woman's Guide to an Extraordinary Life of Meaning and Success.
Great. Thank you so much for joining us here today on the Ellevate podcast. It's always amazing to be inspired by you, to learn and to grow. And I think that that's really what this is all about, sharing our collective wisdom and experiences to move us all forward. And so I thank you so much for being a guest today.
Well, thank you so much. I couldn't agree more. I truly do believe when we as women link arms and stand shoulder to shoulder, we are stronger than we ever imagined. So it's amazing to get to partner with women just like you.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes. Give us 5 stars and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at EllevateNTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.
92% of households that start the year with Peloton are still active a year later.
92% because of a bike?
Not just bikes. We also make treadmills and rowers.
Oh, let me guess, for elite athletes only, right?
Nope. It doesn't matter if you're an avid exerciser or new to working out. Peloton can help you achieve your fitness goals. 92% stick with it. So can you. Try Peloton bikes, tread or row risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only. Not available in remote locations. See additional terms at onepeloton.com/home-trial.